Hey there folks, Caleb Downing, Downing Industries, and today we're going to talk about this Pinty optic and mouse it up to this AR. Let's get into it. Alright, so disclosures and all that kind of stuff out of the way, let's talk about this real quick. Pinty does send me stuff from time to time, optics and lights and I think some lasers, and I think they're going to send me some glasses and things later. They send me stuff, okay, basically. And so my agreement with them is they can send me stuff, and that's fine, and I'll talk about it, and that's fine, but I'm going to be honest. So if it's good stuff, it's good, and if it's bad, it's bad. I'm not going to try to pump something up that's just not worth its weight in cheese. You know what I'm talking about? So that needs to be put out there. I did not pay for this. This was sent to me, okay? So moving on from there, I do give my honest opinions about stuff, and I like when people send me stuff like this, not just because I like stuff, but it gives me an out if I don't like it, because I'm not having to defend a purchase. If I spend a bunch of money on something, I'm going to have a tendency to be like, well, I bought it, and I spent my money on it, so this is why I need to justify buying it. No, we don't even have to worry about that. So we're going to talk about this, a Pinty optic. This is obviously going to be a Chinese optic for those people that really worry about that kind of stuff, as is along with like most of everything else that you buy nowadays. So anyway, we're going to just move on from there. This is, I believe, it's like one of those standard 3 to 9 variable power scopes, basically. Not a red dot, but like scope. 3 to 9, and I think it is a 40 millimeter objective, I think. So 3 to 9 by 40. But it does look like it's got red and green illuminated reticles, right? So you got your dust covers and stuff. Pretty lightweight for whatever that's worth. Does not have those tactical turrets, right? So the exposed turrets, you have turret covers, right? So that you can do your adjustments. Yeah, audible tactile, that's nice. I like audible tactile clicks. They say they are, one click is 1/4, he's upside down, 1/4 of an inch at 100 yards. So 1/4 inch adjustment. So that's good. That's good for a scope. That makes sense. 1/4 or an 1/8 or something like that. That makes sense. Instead of like one click is 1 inch at 100 yards, that's a little bit too much. 1/4 inch, yeah, that's doable. All right, you got your clean cover, snack pack, instructions, which everybody needs to read. A bunch of bubble stuff. Kids are like that. And then it did come with, I do believe, some rings, right? So these are some rings, and I don't know, let me look this up real quick. All right, and this is a 1-inch tube, not a 30 millimeter tube or whatever the other popular ones are. This is a 1-inch tube, so keep that in mind. But it does come with your rings, and they do look like some standard high rings. And they don't look like there's anything super uber special about them. They just have 2 screws on the top, right? Some scope mounts have 4, some have, I think I have had some with like 6, which I don't know why you'd need that on a regular rifle. But then you kind of have a thumb screw adjustment tightening hoochie pucker, whatever, on the side, right? That has a big slot on it for a flathead screwdriver if you want to use a flathead screwdriver. All right, let's go ahead, and everybody knows how these things work. You pop the screws out, you put the scope on it. But I'm going to show you something, because I've never used this leveling kit, this other leveling kit. So we're going to use this other leveling kit on this AR, and let's mount this guy up real quick. Alright, so I found my leveling kit. Let's go ahead and put everything on here. So I went ahead and kind of loosely put these rings on. And when you put rings on, especially 1913 mounts, or really any mount, you want to push the optic mount forward in whatever it's being attached to. Alright, so in this case we have all these little slots in these rails. I'm not attaching the scope to the handguard because that can move and torque on you. You don't want to do that. You want to mount it to the receiver. So I'm going to push it forward in this slot and then tighten it down with my hand, all right? If it's rearward in the slot, then under recoil when the gun actually fires, that scope mount, whatever mount it is, it's gonna try to move forward. So if it's already moved forward all the way and it's butted up in one of those slots, you're gonna hold your zero a lot better. So I'm gonna do that on the back rear one here too. This is all the way back. See, it's got that much wiggle room. We're gonna push it all the way forward and kind of lock it down, all right? And we're just kind of doing hand tight right now. It's fine. It's fine. All right, so before I go and actually put my screws in here, I'm going to put just a dab, just a little dab of Loctite on here because I don't want these guys to back out. You don't need to overdo this. They don't require a whole lot of torque necessarily, but you don't want your screws to be backing out, because they will. If something's going to back out, it's going to back out. All right. So, and there is no torque spec. I read the instructions. There's no torque spec on these guys. And also, since we have a adjustable stock, I'm not going to worry too much about getting the eye relief 100% perfect because I can adjust that back on this side. So make sure we're mounting everything where it's supposed to be. I'm just going to kind of mount this about right somewhere like there. Put my rings on. Alright, now that we have everything in there, kind of, it's snug, it's not tight at all, it can move around and everything. I am going to pop this up real quick and just kind of see. I just said I wasn't going to do it, but just because we can, I am going to pop it up and kind of check my eye relief a little bit. I like to do that on the lowest power setting, so we're going to turn this knob and get it on the lowest power setting for now. Alright, so if you were just to pop this guy up, it's actually not bad right where it is, and I can micro adjust with the stock and things as I would need to do that later. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the little video here, and I don't know who actually is going to see this before they start typing. I completely used these wedges leveling pack completely wrong. Completely wrong. And I'm going to leave the footage in the video. I'm just going to leave it there as a reminder to myself to not get too big for my own shoes, that I get things completely wrong sometimes. These are not, this is a knockoff brand of this leveling pack, had no instructions. I've never used them. I've only kind of seen them in passing-ish. And the way I demonstrated in the video will work. It will level it. But it's almost as ridiculous as mounting a scope backwards. I completely did it backwards. This piece goes on your upper receiver. And then the wedge piece, that does go up like that. And it's 1,000 times simpler if you do it this way. I was doing it backwards, or upside down, basically. And so I was making it 10 times harder. So I apologize for giving out that information in the video, and I already have this thing mounted up. And again, like I said, I'm just going to leave that footage in there, and I'm sorry, but we're going to continue on. And if you want to trash me in the comments that I don't know how to do any gunsmithing stuff, that's cool, because I don't. And if you want to just do all that stuff, you go ahead and do it. But I'm going to leave it in there. Let the trolls be trolls. But if you actually saw this, then you know I did it backwards. But it still worked. But it was backwards. I wouldn't recommend the way that I did it. All right, let's move on, and hopefully the rest of the video is not that bad. All right, so now that we have the scope kind of sitting in the mount, it's still loose, but it's not exactly level at all. I mean, obviously that's not level. And so a couple different ways people do it. I have done it before where I have used little bubble levels. You put one on the turret itself and one on the receiver and make sure everything's lined up. That's one way to do it. Some people have other fancy ways to do it. This is one way that is just pretty simple, right? And I haven't really had a chance to use these things yet, and so we're going to use it today. So this is just a little not a wedge piece. It's kind of like it's a flat, right? It's basically a flat, and it has a groove cut in one end. The flat portion, without the groove, this goes down, and it touches underneath the scope turret. The turret, the adjustment turrets, because there's a flat portion under there. You're not going to place this on the round portion of the scope. That's not flat. But on the flat portion, because that's a true flat angle, right? So we're going to place that piece there, and then you have two wedges. You have a shorter little wedge and a bigger wedge. Since this is a high scope mount, we're going to use the taller wedge, and basically the flat portion down here is going to sit flat on inside one of the 1913 rails, and the angled portion, the wedged portion, that's going to ride in that little slot that we talked about on that other piece, and it's basically going to level everything out. So making sure everything stays flat, we kind of wiggle the scope until everything kind of moves where it needs to be. Make sure everything is actually nice and flat. Alright, and then once everything's in there nice and flat, it's pretty much in. Now we can just, without really having to be super uber careful about moving anything, because it's pretty much set in there, we're just going to hand tighten down these screws. Now there were no torque specs in the instructions. I read the instructions, believe it or not, and there were no torque specs. So I'm just going to say don't over tighten these things. That's why you have some Loctite on it. If you over tighten your rings, you can crush your scope tube, and you just destroyed your scope. So you really don't want to over tighten stuff. So in general, once you go to this longer angle, you can easily over tighten things. I'm just giving it a little bit of snug, right? And that's basically all we're going to do. We're not going to go crazy, but it's going to be in there. And now we take out our little wedge piece. The scope should be in there. Kind of check level real quick. And is it naturally level? Yeah. And there you go. That's pretty easy. We didn't have to use a bunch of weird levels and things and stuff. This seems to be pretty simple. So these little scope turret things, I can see these popping off already because they stick up. They don't fold flat. But it is nice, especially up here. We got a lot of snow and stuff, so it'll be good to keep the snow out of the actual optic itself. But there you go. That's kind of a look at that. Let's go ahead and put the battery in it, and I'll try as best I can to show you the reticle itself. I'll try. It doesn't show up in camera a lot of times, but I'll do my best on it. All right, the battery itself here is a 2032 battery, and thankfully they did not use a completely wacky random battery. Thankfully they have this guy. And do we actually have markings? No, we don't have any markings. So I'm just going to assume we have plus side up, negative side down. That makes sense to me. Let's go ahead and screw this guy in. Talking about the battery cap, you do have an O-ring, so hopefully that should help keep out a lot of moisture and dust and whatnot. When you do screw these things in, just be careful when you screw them in that you don't over tighten it, and that O-ring sometimes can fold on itself and pop out, and then it's not an O-ring anymore. It's O-ringed all the way around, it's sealed all the way around, but a little spot where it bunched up. So make sure it doesn't bunch up and just get it nice and snug. I've never really had these things accidentally come out if it's nice and snug. All right, so now I should be able to look through the scope. Oh wow, yeah, we do have a reticle. All right, I'll try to show you the reticle. We'll do our best on it, and let's see if we can actually see it. All right, so you can kind of see that. There you go. So you got different brightness settings. I'm not sure how focused it is, but then that's your red settings, right? So you got red all the way down, green all the way down. So there you go. So you can kind of see that. Yeah, I didn't think that'd really show up, but there you go. It kind of does show up. Kind of a Christmas tree looking reticle, right? I mean, you got a lot of lines and a lot of data in there. So you probably again need to read your instructions to see exactly what all that means, and then actually shoot your firearm to be able to tell what that drop actually does for the caliber and the setup that you're actually running. All right, so there we go. That is a little look at the at this scope. Interesting stuff. So I'm excited to get out and actually shoot it and actually test it out. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do that right now because we have quite a bit of nasty weather, and I'm not about ready to go out and get myself stuck and frozen. So it's going to be a little bit before we actually get out and shoot this guy. So there will be a part 2 where we actually get out, put it on paper, see if it holds 0. I'm not really going to do a massive torture test where, like, you know, beat the crap out of this thing, try to run over my truck. That's not really what it's for necessarily. I think this would have a good use on like a 22, which I do have a 22 that I might end up just sticking this guy on. That seems probably to be where this guy would be best fielded, just depending on how well he can hold 0 and stuff like that. And if he works well enough, I mean, you could use it on a setup like this for coyotes, pest control, things like that. So anyway, guys, if you have any questions about this, if you liked it, didn't like it, whatever, you let me know what you think. If you got any questions about it, please do let me know. I will just keep testing this thing out, see how it actually works, and report back to you all later in a part 2. So y'all be good to be safe. Appreciate you guys watching, subscribing, everything. Thanks, Pinty, for sending this thing out. Hopefully, we'll catch you guys in the next video. See ya.